Hello, everybody, and welcome to an Arkham List video with Daniel from Quick Learner.
Hello.
Thanks for joining me. We've done actually a lot of collabs lately, just because we've been recording like every second Monday for the Yithian Cup. So it's been fun. I was on an interview on your channel. You're joining me for a list video here, and I imagine there's going to be more in the future. We're just going to like poke and be like, hey, after suffering through the Yithian Cup, do you want to record a conversation video? And we're probably like, hell yeah, because it's fun and chill to talk about Arkham with a human as opposed to by yourself, right? Because that's how we probably do a lot of our list videos, just kind of like talking to our computer screen, being like, thank you for being here, thank you.
Yeah. Nice to bounce off someone, you know?
Exactly, yeah. So today we're going to talk about 5 impactful cards from the Feast of Hemlock Vale. This is very similar to the concept of like previous ones where I did like game changers or my favorites, but I figured getting this one's less for me being here and also mostly just for like getting your perspective on these cards. So what are your thoughts on like what defines an impactful card or a game changer for you?
Yeah, for me, especially with this huge card pool that we have, I'm really talking about cards that open up an archetype beyond what we might think it normally should go in. And we'll see that throughout the cards that I've picked. Maybe a little bit of a hole in a class or an archetype that now, oh, okay, I could see this playing in more than just the usual places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. For me, it's very similar. Also, like cards that I think have just like opened up consistency. I think that's a big thing. Like for me, like at this point now, what makes a card impactful is how it improves just general consistency as the card pool as a whole. That's a big thing. Because like I think that most cards in Hemlock Vale, it's a pretty impactful set without like being too busted broken. But there's a lot of cards that are just like good at just making sure that everybody is more consistent. So
yeah, and to be clear, like I'm not picking the things that are like a high on power level. I think that's a different conversation.
Definitely, 100%. The strongest cards in Hemlock Vale is definitely, because I think there's some strong cards here, but strong and impactful are actually two very different things, which some people might not, jive with, but actually I think it is the case. So I'm going to start us off, and then we're going to go to yours. But the first one we have here from me, these aren't in any order, mind you. These are just cards that we view as impactful. Is all of McBride, which also happens to be on yours, because this is one that we were both like, she is just so damn impactful.
Yeah, how do I leave her off? I mean,
yeah, to the point that this is like something that I've talked about a lot on my channel, and I'm sure you've also talked about all of McBride too. She just does so much with such a small change. Like, it's literally just one number different, and like it's insane the consistency that she provides for that.
yeah, for me, the idea of token fishing before was okay. You could play this in Jim and Father Mateo and maybe some others, but it didn't quite hit the spot where you felt like you could really win with this all the time. And now with all of McBride 2, you can.
Yeah, it's there was the case with it and the that Father Mateo deck that I brought, which I've been talking about a lot. It was just insane what you're able to do with her. It's just, I did the math in that one video where it just increases it from like 19% to 25% to like hit an Elder Sign with Father Mateo. And that 6% sounds like a small number, but like it becomes a 1 in 4 as opposed to a 1 in 5, which is, if you take like 36 tests throughout the whole game, right? That's 1 in 5 is like, this is just like, it's not actually how probability works, but like if you just look at it like this, right? 1 in 5, it's 7, and the other one, it's 8. So it's like one more Elder Sign as you get through it, right? If you do in 36, it's actually like 9, right? Like it's like those things, it's just like, it doesn't actually work that way. I understand that probability is hard to actually explain in a way that makes sense, but it's just like that much more consistent in getting you what you need to get.
And I love that she's level 2. So you can try this out in off-class mystics. You can do something in Sister Mary if you're trying to proc Blessing of Isis all the time. I don't know if you can do anything in, say, Daisy or Patrice, but maybe you can.
You probably can one day for sure.
Yeah, I just like having a level 2 card that has a pretty good impact on the game. So a lot of different investigators can try out this archetype.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, it's the upgrade I didn't know I wanted. Because, like, I know a lot of people would play all of McBride Zero, but I always found her to just be, like, very inefficient. Like, I feel like she always would cause you to fail more than actual. And even if you're trying to find the token that you want, if you find the token but still fail, like, I think she has, like, a much higher fail rate than all of McBride does, because being able to choose two of four instead of two of three is huge. It's incredible.
Yep, totally agree.
All right. Now we split up. We have no more shared things on this. We just have to get all of McBride out of the way because we've talked about her so much, but let's go into some cards that we maybe haven't talked about as much on this. So my first one here is Matchbox. This is a Survivor card that costs 1. It has the discard synergy, which works really well with Scavenging or like Will Yorick or any sort of like just general red shenanigans. And you can exhaust it to spend a supply. Your location gets -1 Shroud until the end of the turn. Just to be completely transparent with all of you, this was my I put this one here as a alternative to Daniel's Survivor card that we're going to see on this list, because it was between that one and the one Daniel chose, so I put this one just for the sake of diversity. But I do think that this is one of the 2 most impactful cards for Survivor in terms of what it's done just for Survivor's ability to be able to be the Survivor class, which is, investigating at Shroud locations, lowering them, being able to scrap their way through it, and then also let's just push it under the rug, but using Shed a Light and Old Keyring 3 to just absolutely just break the game wide open. And I think that it's also super efficient, only costs 1, and it's one of those things that if you play it in your deck, you just put it into play, and then 4 turns later, you're like, hey, you're going to investigate this location, I'm making the Shroud 1, you're going to be able to do this. You don't even necessarily need to use it on yourself, which is why I think it is more impactful than it actually seems.
Have you played this in Bob yet?
No, but I Eric and I built it for my Eric and I are playing Dark Matter, and I'm playing a very janky Bob deck, and I'm running Matchbox in it.
Yeah, that sounds cool, right? Yeah. I haven't played it in him yet either, but I have theorized about it. Like, it's a good level 0 card for him as you transition into the rogue stuff. It's an item. It costs almost nothing, maybe even sometimes nothing.
Yep. Yeah.
This was my number 2 as well, my runner-up.
It's very good. I've never played it. So the hardest part of Matchbox, and this is whenever there's actually someone on our Discord recently, on the PBG Discord, who was like, so everyone always says playing assets is bad. So why do they mean that? But it's I have to just say, playing assets is not bad. Assets are the strongest card type in the game. That is just a fact. It's hard to beat that. However, at a certain point, playing an asset is negative, right? So it's one of those things where the worst part of Matchbox is finding the time to play it. And if you draw it too late, it's kind of a bummer because of that. I thought this card would be more ubiquitous than it was. I still think it's very impactful, right? I still think it's very good. But that's why I'm excited to try it in Bob, because him not having to spend an action to play this means that it's good from turn 1 to turn 7, right?
Yep, I totally agree.
All right, let's go to your number 4, which is
Strong Armed. Yeah, so to me, dealing extra damage is really, really important in this game when you want to, right? So an attack that does 2 base sometimes needs to really do 3 to get rid of a annoying, maybe snake that has 3 health. Hard to do if you don't have cards like Vicious Blow. Having another card in your deck that is not Vicious Blow, so doubling the number that you have, is really strong. Now, this card is more than just that, right? It also lets you make sure you hit. That's really cool. For someone like Silas, who doesn't have access to something like Vicious Blow other than, what's it called? Long Shot, right?
Long Shot, yeah.
Which I think is also fairly impactful in the card pool as a whole. This is just another way to do it. So, yeah, I like that it fits a couple of different niches. It's not just a Vicious Blow. It allows you to use this on something like the katana, right? So you can commit it to the agility test. You can also use it on the bow, the ornate bow. So there's a lot of different places for the card, and a lot of different investigators who want to use the effect.
Yeah. And what's nice about it is that, so this is something that Travis always gives us guff for, which is when Bryn and I both rated analysis on like the lower end of the skill power for the seeker skills, right? Because I actually do believe that placing a clue down is a bigger cost than it seems, and most of the time it's probably you're very unlikely to find a test that you want to unless you're some sort of combo deck, and that's when I think cards like that are really good. Mm-hmm. Luckily, the nice thing about Strong Armed is that the ask to draw a new token is literally the lowest ask on like some of these pullback cards, right? Because you're the goon, most likely. Your job is to fight, and that usually means you have more health, right? So like you can just like take a few hits to get the token pull that you want. So it's very easy to just like, this card basically reads like, I'm gonna succeed my test, which is very nice.
And those are the kinds of tests that you need to actually hit, right?
Yes.
Getting a clue with analysis, if you're just doing an investigation, which is not always what you do with the card.
Yes, it's true.
But that's like pretty low impact. Mm-hmm. But the tempo that you get from drawing an auto fail on this and then re-rolling it and passing is huge. Mm-hmm. So yeah, very impactful. I wish Calvin could take this, but very sad you can't.
It is yeah, no, this is it's like going back to this in long shot too, like it's so Silas did get a nice boost from these, but like this is good in like Mark Harrigan, right? Like you can like, you know, you turn this to also like you just get like a token and you're like, you know what, I think I kind of also want to draw a card like with this test as well. Like I want to basically make this like a vicious blow overpower hybrid. I think that it's a very successful card design, and it's really nice. And also, Travis, if you're watching this, I do think Analysis is a good card. Like, I think that like the protecting of like the right test is good, but I just think that it's better in like combo oriented type things. That's the only reason why I say that. But it's the same with this. Like the combo is, you know, you're using your thing. You're not just like, you actually can't commit this. Well, you actually can commit this to just punching, but then you're just doing a blank card.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll ignore the whole melee range part, but it is fun to use it with something like, I said, Katana can actually let you re-roll and get the +2 damage on it. And that does then, 4 damage? That's pretty cool.
That's very cool.
Taking damage. I remember you played this early on when it came out this year, maybe the end of last year. Maybe with a Zoe deck. And
I killed myself.
You just killed yourself with it. It was very funny.
Yeah, because I was playing Parallel Zoe. Yeah. And does she have one less health, or am I just crazy? Because that's the thing that I think.
That sounds right, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm fine. And then I'm like, oh, I'm not fine.
But you could play this in York and you know, just put it on soak, and that's totally fine. But
on Tommy, to use it to actually like trigger, like you have like a Becky survival knife combo. You commit this, kill something, load up Becky. You know, like I think that there's a lot of really cool things. And also, I'm gonna ignore the melee range too, because this does feel, I think, nicer in terms of like fitting the melee class, and it also softens the blow because ranged like firearms did get a huge card in this set as well. Yeah.
I just don't want the conversation about this card to always be.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Oh no, you can't use it on certain cards. Well.
Yeah, but that's kind of like how cards work, right? Like some of them are, there's a balance around them. All right, let's go to my number 3, which is look at that cleaning kit. So this card is the firearm. This is the boost that firearms got really good, and I think this is why this is very impactful. This is both the level 0 version and the upgraded version. I think both are very playable, and they both have their pros and cons, mostly if you can run them or not, right? That's a big part of it. The nice thing about the Guardian class is that they haven't really had like a stellar must-take accessory slot, and I think that's good. I think like if you ever have like a card like, for example, just shooting the breeze here, a Lucky Cigarette Case, right? Which is just like so good and so efficient. It's one of those things where like when people, like when they talk about like empirical hypothesis being like a slotless Lucky Cigarette Case, right? That's kind of like the downside of having like a certain slotted item be so good, is that they kind of have to make the next one slotless to like compete with it. And Cleaning Kit, Guardian doesn't have that problem. So this is like just a really nice thing that is able to put into this and really like just fit in the deck that you want to fit it in with. what this has done for Guardian consistency in terms of their ability to run ammo or like just like supply kits, even like fingerprint kit for like Wilson Richards or anyone else who's using that, it's a very tightly designed card, and it plays as good as it like reads on its design, on the design side.
Yeah, even better, I would say you start looking at cards that you have in play and say, oh, this has supplies.
Yeah.
The flashlights obviously have supplies, that's been there since day one, but sometimes you play a lot of different investigators that have random stuff that suddenly have supplies, or maybe you play a campaign that gives you some story assets that have supplies, and those tend to be really good.
Yes.
And this triples maybe or maybe not triples, maybe doubles the number of times you can use it.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's, you kind of just like look at this as like an additional copy of those cards sometimes. And then if you have experience, right, you are able to use this as additional copies of that experience gun, right? Like, if, like, just for example, just like lightning gun, right? Like, no one plays that card anymore. It's a damn shame because it shoots literal lightning, right? But like, being able to just like have more ammo on that is really good. And this one also is very refillable, right? Because it uses supplies. So you can do like emergency cache 3 to fill it back up, which is really nice, because like people before were doing that on just like fingerprint kit 4. There's like those decks that like kind of have those things where you're just like, the idea is you just reload that. This now you can like also kind of adapt. So it also works really well. Like you can like flex. You can have like a gun in one hand, fingerprint kit in another, right? It works really well for like Roland or Joe Diamond. But it also just goes across the board at just being universally very good. And then the upgraded version has further synergy with cards like shotguns, like anything that has like the shotgun effect, where it cares about how much you succeed by. Not to mention, Cleaning Kit also opened up Schizo Tool to a very relevant deck now that feels particularly Schizo Tool in its style of play, which is using this to have your ornate bow constantly loaded when you need to, so you could just rapid it out. And I think that's why this card is so impactful, because it took like, I think Skids has been getting pieces over time that's made him better, right? I think that that is a very accurate thing to say. But I think this is the card was like that last piece where it's just like, holy cow, like this is really good in Schizo Tool.
Yep, totally agree. I think it's nice to have 0 XP cards, and the level 3 version too, that get better when the rest of your deck gets better.
Yes.
And this is a good version of that.
Yeah. Sweet. All right, let's go to your number 3, which is
Snitch. Okay, I really like the parlay archetype. However, a lot of people look at it and say this is Alessandra only because you get the extra action to parlay. And yes, she's really good for the archetype. I think this, though, as the payoff for the archetype, rather than just focusing on what an extra action or beguile does for you in Alessandra, opens it up for everyone else. This reminds me a lot of Look What I Found level 2, a little bit of Lesson Learned level 2 as well, in that you get to discover clues, 2 clues, fast, and the ability to get them from connecting locations is really, really good.
yes.
So, man, rogues already have a lot of things that they can do to progress the game state. Parlaying just a way to get more clues is fantastic. I've done a few different decks with this, and it's always overperformed. Being able to loop your deck if you have the aforementioned Lucky Cigarette case to get this back just feels so good. And it's really cheap. One resource is basically nothing in Rogue.
Yes. Yeah. And even just like being able to loop it even further, just like with Eldritch Tongue too, when you like the time comes. I actually think you're 100% right with what you say. Like, people see parlay cards and they think Alessandra, right? But why don't people like, I mean, like, I understand that parlay cards are different than what I'm about to say here, but it's like saying like only Bob can play items because Bob gets the extra value out of them, right? But it's not the case, right? Like, Alessandra just gets extra value out of parlay cards, right? But like, there's no reason why another rogue couldn't also go into the archetype, or anyone who can run them, because Snitch is a level 2 card. Like, I think probably what you need for parlay is a payoff, and Snitch is the payoff. So if you can run like Snitch, like that is like the final thing you need to just like make sure your deck has that payoff and consistency of getting where you need to go.
I mean, honestly, with Rogue how it is, I'd be very happy with 2 copies of this, 2 copies of Grift.
Yep.
And just say, look, I will wait for those cards to line up in my hand, because it probably will. And you get so much value. It's very hard to fail at a test that's difficulty 0.
And what we're talking about too is just also like finding those pieces, because like if you're playing a parlay deck, that's probably a good reason for you to also look at maybe running British Bulldog, if not just like for a weapon. And then also it made me think when you were talking about this is like I kind of want to try a rogue deck through Forgotten Age, where I do it in the thick of it. I grab Easy Mark and a Snitch, and I hold it for the out when Ishtaka shows up. And just like use it to just like, that's the thing, right? Because it's like, it's very good at giving you, like, a parlay is just going to show up. And I do think that parlay is going to just show up in more campaigns going forward. I also think it should have just shown up in more campaigns going backwards too. It should have just been like something they used more often as a thing.
Yeah, there's the whole idea of you just need fine clothes for the first 2 scenarios of Carcosa, maybe the first scenario of Forgotten Age, and then people don't think about going further. But I think Circle and Done has a ton of parlays in it if you go the route of the Lodge. So if you're playing a campaign with some campaign knowledge, this probably fits into a lot more places than you expect. Yeah,
and this card is very good. Like, it's like 2 experience, but it's Tesla's 2 clues, like from anywhere, like connecting to you is very good. And you can split it, so that's even better. Like, don't sleep on those type of effects just because like you're used to getting clues in other ways. Like, this is worth the 2 experience. I definitely think that this card fits to be very impactful, and it's great on this list.
Yeah, and it also opens up some play styles, like Look What I Found Level 2 does as well, where I kind of get sad when people play a very rigid, I move to a location, I get all the clues, I move to the next location, and that's just my whole game. It can be very powerful if you are doing everything right, but it's also really fun to try something else where you run around the map a little bit more. So I'm glad that Parallel Monterey Jack can take this, even though the regular Edge of the Earth version can't, because he wants to still move around quite a bit.
Yeah, and it's the what we were just saying about how like changing the play pattern from just the go to get all clues in one location is the same kind of thing of changing how you approach enemy management. Where I had that shift of going from, what if I killed enemies more in the enemy phase, right? Or like, what if I used dodges to be able to manipulate the enemies how I wanted them to, right? It's the same kind of thing where as soon as your perspective changes from what if I just got all the clues here, moved here, got all the clues, but like, what if I left a clue and took advantage of it in another way? That's one of the reasons why Shed a Light is particularly so powerful, because you can leave a clue on a location and come back and snitch it, like, and grab it without going back, and snitches the same way. Yeah. All right. And also, for everyone who's wondering why, whenever I'm like, and this is your next card, Daniel, what is it? Daniel doesn't respond anyway, because Daniel doesn't know the order that these cards are put into the slideshow.
It's true.
These are PBG list videos. They're a trial by fire. All right. Let's go to my number 2 here, which is Bewitching. Wow. Who would have thought a permanent card would be impactful? It would change the game when you could have it on in play always. So let's go back to the good year of 2022 when Scarlet Keys came out. Or was it 2023? I don't even know. But there was Dirty Fighting, which is, I think, it's a pretty good argument that it's one of the most impactful rogue cards that have come out for the class since probably when Lockpicks first came out, or even like Breaking and Entering, right? Like cards that are just like so good for the rogue class. And Dirty Fighting was like insanely good at being both well designed and also just super impactful for the class. Fast forward 1 year later, Hemlock comes out, and you can now have you can play Dirty Fighting as a one of, and have it when the first enemy shows up. That's gigantic. Bewitching, or otherwise known as Trick to the Plan, because it's like stick to the plan but uses tricks, is, I think, probably not the strongest card in Hemlock Vale, but I think one of the strongest cards in Hemlock Vale. You can make a pretty good argument for that, just because consistency is really powerful. You do have to make sacrifices, I think, for Bewitching. because 6 XP is a lot. But if you are playing tricks, like if you're playing dirty fighting, it's probably worth Bewitching over most other things just to be able to have it like in your hand on turn 1. Then you add other tricks to it and it becomes even better. If you have tricks that are like myriad or you can like run in your deck, it works really well. The ability to either take the card from it or search your deck is also super versatile, which is incredibly exciting as a player. And I think that this card just like sings from top to bottom.
I think it's very, pardon the pun here, engaging
Yeah.
to have those two abilities, because I think the way that I'd like to play it is maybe similar, where there's one thing that I always want and then the other 2 cards I leave for the search effect.
Yes.
Because if I can get through my deck slightly quickly, then I can just leave 1 copy there and I'm always grabbing something from my deck instead, and that's probably more powerful because I'm thinning out my deck a little bit through the search effect and by leaving something on the permanent card too.
Yeah, definitely. And like the fact that even like everyone probably has a preference for how they do Bewitching, right? Like that shows just like how deep this card can go. And then eventually you're going to be playing with someone and they're going to do something you never thought of doing with Bewitching, and you're going to be like, what the heck? Because like I think at this point now, most stick to the plan has kind of been like pretty solved. Like people know what to do. I think Bewitching is a lot more deep in what you can explore with it. And then in 4 years, they're going to release a trick and it's going to be like, this just pops this whole thing wide open in a different way, right? Like, that's why the rogue class is very exciting, is because I think that they get like some really cool designs that aren't as forgotten as Survivor designs are, which I think is really exciting. Yeah. Sweet. All right, let's go to your number 2, which is
Microscope. Okay, we put the level 4 version here, but I think they're both pretty interesting. So I think that people sleep on this card a bit because it looks very slow, that you have the 2 actions to investigate. Now, the difference between the level 0 and level 4 is that there is no limit to that top reaction, which is after an enemy at your location is successfully evaded or defeated, place a resource there. So that can happen any number of times. One thing that I've noted throughout this whole list so far is that there's a lot of tools. Well, a lot of tools are good for Wilson Richards, who came out in the box, but also really good for one Kaimani Jones, who came out in the last box. Man, how many clues can you get from this thing just while Kaimani is doing their thing, right? Yep. It's crazy. And yeah, there's other ways to get clues in Seeker. Do you really need to spend 4 XP into it? Yes, if you're doing something else too. And that is the power of this card, that it suddenly opens up Kaimani and others, maybe Joe or Roland for level 0, to get value out of other actions that they're doing. And maybe Seeker people say, they don't need to evade things. Well, you don't have to do the evading. You just sit there and someone else does the evading or defeating at your location. Then it starts to get really good.
Yes. I think in Kaimani, this is like insanely good, because Kaimani, when you evade, you're evading twice, right? So like you get 2, right? So Kaimani is very easy to see the value. I do agree with you though, that I think this card is quite overlooked. And I think the reason is that people would play this as the main Clover when this isn't the job. This is a flexes tool, right? Like if you go to like to your example of like Roland Banks, just like, even though you can only run the level 2 version, right? But like so the level 0 version, sorry, the level 0 version, not the level 2 version. If there will be one in the future. Sorry, I spoiled a card from Drowned City. I'm so sorry, everybody.
Oh.
But like it's the level 0 version. Every time you're defeating an enemy, you're getting a clue with his ability, and you're also, putting some evidence on this. Then when there's the time and there's 3, which you've done passively, you're going to get those extra clues out of it, right? So like that's where this card is like is it really pops, where you just have to like you said with Snitch, have to change your game plan as opposed to just always doing the same thing. If you're a Microscope deck, your game plan has changed for how you handle things, and that's what's going to make the card that much better, right? Because like in Roland, I think this card actually can be like super crazy, because like he has that ability. Joe Diamond as well, right? Or like I played it in a Norman Withers deck. I was just trying out the level 0 version with a Silas who fights and evades quite commonly, right? And Norman was just holding it, getting evidence, and then like later on being like, okay, I'm gonna grab a bunch of clues here, and then a bunch of clues here, and then it's over, right? Which is really nice.
Yeah, the first time I played this card was level 0 with Charlie Kane, with the idea that he can pass one test. And the extra action isn't a big deal because all you want to do is pass one test anyway.
Yeah.
And it really did a lot. I was very impressed with just that ability to get 3 clues at once. And the level 4 here can get 4, which is incredible at higher player counts. I don't know if you need to run the level 4 at level or with 2 players because that's unlikely to be necessary, but even so, I think the boost of up to +6 is really strong for someone like Kaimani.
Yes. It actually made me, I think after this, I'm going to build a Roland deck about Microscope using like on the hunts to just find enemies to kill. Yeah, that's...
Another Science Rules Roland?
Another one. I mean, Travis has always said that Roland is like, has one of the, like, I think like Seeker Guardian is a very strong card pool and there's a lot of cool things you can do. And like they're so good at flexing, and I think Travis is right. Like Roland is always just like sleeper, just his card pool is just insanely tight, and there's just so many cool things you can do, especially because his ability is so solid. Yeah,
and the boost here is going to give you that you'll pass the test, right? That's what makes it, I think, so good.
Yeah.
And then there's Daryl. I guess we didn't talk about Daryl, who might just run this for evidence.
Yeah. Good old Daryl. I do hope Daryl I want them to do like 1 or 2 more cards that do evidence as well, just because I feel like I want like a little bit more than Daryl. If he gets like 1 more exciting evidence piece to have just some diversity in builds, I think is going to be really cool.
Yeah. One last thing I want to say about this one for Kate, who it's sort of made for. Just in general, the theme of this is pretty cool. That you like defeat or evade an enemy, you get a little piece of them in some way, and you put it under your microscope to study it, and then you later get to discover some clues based on it. I think that's pretty cool. Winner of a design.
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah. Sweet. All right. My number 1 here is my last card, and it's also a Seeker card, and it is Transmogrify.
Ooh.
This card is... I've been trying to get a little bit more cautious about what I say things to not be so hyperbolic, but I think this card is very scary and very powerful for a level 0 effect. I think it's still, though, very fair, but I think that this card... cover up the bottom part. Like that, like they get extra clues, that doesn't matter to me. For this card, enemy lockdown... basically ever since Parallel Ashcan Peak came out, and I realized the strongest thing you can do in this game is just like move an enemy to an adjacent location, right? Change how enemies actually interact with you. It made stuff like handcuffs and now Transmogrify go up in value to the point where like handcuffs is now, I think, much higher for me in terms of its impact. Transmogrify is like that but different, right? Like with handcuffs, you can, if you fail, you get another chance. With Transmogrify, you don't get the clue. There's some differences to it, but I think both are equally as impactful for what they've done to the card pool. Like if you're playing Innsmouth, bring this card. This card will go so insanely good in Innsmouth. I've been trying it out in other campaigns because I think it is just like that good to see how it works. Just because being able to say no to an enemy, like you draw an enemy, you're the cluever, you're on your own, you're on a location, you got all the clues, you draw an enemy, and you say, okay, this enemy is just going to live here forever. I'm going to just move away from this location, and I don't care about it anymore, right? And like that is just so powerful, being able to say no to something like that. Yeah, it seems very good. This one is less here for the diversity and what it does for the card pool for me, but just because I think this is probably quietly the strongest card in Hemlock Vale for me. It's just so good.
So there was a discussion in the PBG Discord recently about locking down weaknesses like this with this card. What do you think?
Like, should it be possible?
Yeah, I mean, is it just...
Yeah, I think it should be possible. I think you should reward players for cleverly thinking. It's because, like, as soon as you take that away, it becomes one of the things where the only way now to deal with that weakness is to fight it, right? and that's less exciting than other stuff.
So here's my answer to that, which I think we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Is, when I play Father Mateo and you get the Serpents of Yig as your weakness, it's an annoying little speed bump. But how do you get rid of it? You send it off with a Spectral Razor.
Yep.
It's only got like 2 fight or something, so it's pretty easy to dispatch. You spent a card and you got rid of your weakness.
Yeah.
And I get that for Seekers that you're drawing your weaknesses more often because of the insane card draw that they might have, but spend a card, solve your weakness, doesn't seem so bad to me.
Yep. Likewise too, I think that the designers themselves have kind of just adapted this, where you'll notice that most signature weaknesses that are enemies now usually have a passive effect. So their threat is less, I'm going to kill you with damage, as older ones saw, right? Like, it was kind of like Tony. Like, that was kind of the shift, right? Like, Father Mateo and Will Yorick both had their weaknesses were just like, we're going to stop you from doing your thing, but I'm also here to kill you. Boo, right? But like with Tony Morgan was the first one. It's like, I'm going to be hanging out over here and I just have Doom, right? And then we saw that Zamakona, he's going to Doom out whenever you do those things. The Weeping Uri for Kohaku is kind of similar, where like it has a passive threat, but you could nullify it with cards like this. And like, I think this all stems to also Nat Cho's weakness, right? Tommy Malloy or whatever his name is, where it became a clever solve of your weakness is super rewarding for the player base, right? And I think you're right. Like, spend a card, solve a weakness is a pretty good rate to go. And this is spend a card, solve a weakness. Yeah, of course, if you're cycling through your deck, you technically solve it multiple times. But this card also, has those things where like if a location if like locations get discarded, it's gone, right? The weakness is back into your discard pile. But yeah.
And, they could collect Doom still, and there's other reasons why it might not be good for them to hang out, like you said. I prefer that Seeker enemy management looks something like this rather than assets. I like that there's various flavors. I'm still a big Persuasion fan because that can solve it in a different way, although I don't think that one works on weaknesses, but it solves enemies in kind of a different way, just removing them from the board, which can be better.
Yeah.
So yeah, good card, very impactful.
Yes, and I am to echo. I also agree that this is the Seeker enemy management I like. Existential Riddle is another great one where it has like its downsides that might pop up, but usually it is pretty good. It's super cool to see. All right, your number one is
Hunting Jacket. All right, I knew this one. I find that when I play Survivors, what I really want is a little bit more ways to get resources. I know that they can run resource light if you play that way. Dark Horse is a thing. However, sometimes you need some way of getting a bunch of resources at once, and Hunting Jacket does that, and some other stuff too. I think at level 2, this card does basically a lot for every survivor. I don't see any reason not to run this card because they don't have anything else in the body slot that's that impactful. The card draw later is really nice, and the 2/2 soak is an extremely good rate. I don't know what else there to say about it at the moment, but I always used to run Nothing Left to Lose as the economy card when you upgrade things in Survivor.
Yeah.
This is different, maybe better in most cases, whereas Nothing Left to Lose makes you do is better like at the very beginning of the game. I think this is good throughout the entire game.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really also kind of like the flavor you want compared to the two, right? Like if you're committing and losing, nothing like that, and that's better, right? That's what I'm saying. Like this is like better for the game where we have these options. Because I agree, this was also, as I talked about with Matchbox, this was like my Survivor card that was also there, but I chose Matchbox for diversity. I think Hunting Jacket is very powerful. I think it's also very fun to play with because it rewards you by pretending you're smart, which is really nice, right? Because it actually, like, there's like no real decisions to make here, but like as soon as you're able to do something with it, like I'm just waiting for the person who has the dilemma deck where they put a dilemma that they weren't able to play under this and then like do some stuff like that.
Well, that's fun. Yeah.
But like it's actually like this is such a like a spiky design, right? It just gives you resources and you're not actually sacrificing anything for it. But it feels very clever to be like, to like look at your hand and be like, okay, this is the one I don't need, or this is one I can take advantage of later, which is, it's very nice for rewarding the players for that kind of thing. And it's also like very good soak, right? Just 2/2 for 2, and you also are getting 6 resources out of it, so it really only costs like, well, technically 0, right? It's very nice. It's a very good card.
Yeah, for getting 4 resources later, that's also a good thing for survivors, right? Maybe you do want to get down to 0 right now because you're playing Dark Horse. Maybe we've got an upcoming investigator who cares about not having so many cards in hand, right?
Yep.
So there's lots of cool things in the survivor card pool already that this gels with. Even as you say that it's just probably strong on the face of it, I think the card pool tells you that this is something you want to do already.
Yep.
You commit your strong armed, right? Put the damage here, get your cards back, right? That's pretty cool.
That is very cool. Yeah. And then there's also like the payoffs with like Empirical Hypothesis, where it's just like the one that we haven't really seen played yet, the no cards in hand.
Right.
But
the
like
unused one.
Yeah, with George Barnaby, I think that that's going to become a viable thing to do. And then I think when, as survivors often do, they get really rewarded by the weird investigators, because I think most survivors can play like the survivor archetypes, right? That's kind of like their thing. So I think that we're going to suddenly see a lot of investigators in Survivor being able to be like, I'm going to take advantage of these no card in hand things. And Hunting Jacket, I think, is going to be a huge piece for that.
Can you imagine playing Last Chance and saying, guess what I can do? I can get rid of my second card in my hand and now go down to nothing.
Yeah, I think that like that's going to be pretty sweet. Like the downside of like the empty hand archetype is that in any game where empty hand is a thing, it's bad because cards win card games, right? Like that's how like it's always been. So it's cool to see like a payoff that's super versatile and super like efficient as well. Yeah.
Oof, Tommy playing this gets even more out of it.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just love the design, and it feels like it solves the one part of Survivor that I kind of miss. I tend to play with, you need lots of cards and resources to make the big things happen, and there wasn't a great way of doing that in Survivor. This being able to be recurred, Yorick, resourceful, etc., also makes it even that much better.
I haven't played this in Yorick, but I probably should, because like there's the whole thing about Yorick where the leather jackets and rogues, the leather coats and Survivor, is that it's so easy to just have as a 0 cost thing to play, but Yorick loves resources, and this gets resources.
Oh yes,
like crazy. Yeah, that seems pretty good. I actually have like a bunch of decks that I want to build now. That's always a good sign, though, that, you talk about spend 40 minutes talking about Arkham, and then you're like, I want to try some deck ideas out. So I know what
I will
I'm doing
say that most of our cards are pretty accessible. There was the level 4 Microscope, but there's a level 0. Do we have anything else that was above level 2?
Let's find out. We can go back in time.
I feel like not. So you could
I don't think so.
Play most of these.
The Bewitching.
Bewitching. Yeah.
Yeah, Snitch. Cleaning Kit has a level 0 version. Strong Arm level 1. And then Olive is a level 2. Yeah, no, it's basically just like Bewitching was the only thing that's kind of like closed off there.
So even more impactful that you can take this in a huge chunk of investigators.
Yeah, I think that's a very good conclusion to make, right? That like I think like impact kind of needs to be broader than just like Cyclopean Hammer is an impactful card just because it's busted, but I wouldn't say that like it has the same impact that like toe-to-toe does, for example, right? Like toe-to-toe, like in the same set can fit into a lot of small places. Cyclopean Hammer is obviously better, right? But is it as impactful? That's an interesting question to ponder on this
sure
Thursday.
Makes a big impact on the enemies you hit.
It's true, yeah. They're dead.
But to add on to that, I feel like people don't talk about level 0 cards enough, given that they tend to spend a lot of time in your deck and they cost you nothing to put in them in the first place. So the opportunity cost that comes with having higher level cards isn't really a question.
Yes. Yeah. It's very true. And I think that it's like That's ever like also why like when I personally when there's like the splitting hairs of like XP, right? Like going into it and being like, but this card costs 3 XP versus 2 XP. Like which the 2 XP one's like worse, so the 3 XP one's better, or like worse, yada yada yada. There's just so many different things I think that even like terms of talking about the value of something changes depending on the remaining 29 cards in your deck.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a whole another video though, maybe.
It
but
is.
I like this this discussion of what it means for something to be impactful. Yeah.
It is definitely that it's good. You know, you record a video, come out with some deck ideas and some video ideas. More content for all the people. By the way, Quick Learner's channel. Unfortunately, Quick Learner's off the screen now. I don't actually have. But the Quick Learner's channel is down in the video description. You should check his channel out. It's really good. And we'll be doing more of this in the future, as well as Dying as Yithians, if you haven't been watching that yet.
A lot more of that.
A lot more of that. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one. And as always, a GG's.